Welcome to Resiliency Redefined. I'm your host, Robyne, and I am thrilled to share with you information about resiliency, well-being, performance, education, business, parenting, and everything in between. I'm committed to joining you each week to talk about these big ideas and bring them into action, habits, tools, strategies, tactics that allow us to finally uncover what it takes to truly be well. And I'm just so excited that you're here. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Resiliency Redefined. My name is Robyne, and today I'm following up on another question that came in through social media. I believe it was through Instagram. And the person asked me, okay, Robyne, I heard you say on an earlier podcast, this is how you improve your self-esteem, but I need to know more. So on an earlier first of all, I got you. I will happily dive into this topic with you. And to make sure we're all on the same page for folks who maybe hadn't heard the earlier episode, I made reference to one of the best ways to improve your self-esteem is to be a person who does what they say they're going to do. The best way to improve your self-esteem is to be a person who says what they're going to do. And there's so many different reasons as to why that increases our self-esteem. It ties into self-trust, accountability, integrity, operating in a place that you're in alignment with your values. So there's lots of reasons why that improves your self-esteem. However, that is just scratching the surface about self-esteem. There's so many other ideas that I want to share. And to be able to answer this person's question, there are other things and considerations when it comes to self-esteem that I thought would be helpful to be able to share on this episode, which is why this whole episode, we are going to spend time talking about what self-esteem actually is and just some examples on things that we can do to strengthen our belief and our confidence in ourselves and ultimately our sense of self-worth. So thank you for asking the question. Again, if you ever have any questions, curiosities, wonderments, please feel free to reach out. Do not be shy. I love answering your questions. I love hearing from you. I spend the time going through the comments to be able to find those questions. And again, it will not be time wasted if you take that minute to ask what's on your mind, because I'm sure the question that you have, probably other people have as well. So why don't you be the person who speaks up? So what I want to highlight today with self-esteem is that often that word is interchanged with self-worth or this idea about our efficacy. So self-esteem, self-worth, self-efficacy, all of it ties into our belief and our ability to do what we say we're going to do, how we see ourselves, how we position ourselves, or our confidence of who we are, what we're all about, and what matters most to us. It's this, I said this piece about our identity as well. Now, for us to be able to understand the impact about self-esteem, I think it's so helpful to recognize that before the 1980s, for all intents and purposes, people's self-esteem was relatively intact because it was very much built on what we call this idea that Dr. Gabor Mate introduces that was genuine self-esteem. Genuine, which means it's steadfast, it is consistent, it doesn't fluctuate. It's this belief based on our lived experience that we are solid, that we are a good person, that we're values and we are aligned and it is good. But interesting, okay, so what happened in the 80s where all of a sudden people started to identify that they had a self-esteem problem? Well, a lot of it started out of this idea about our self-esteem very much being externally driven. And what we know about that is this is when all of a sudden we saw this insurgence of messages in media that were saying that we are not okay, that we are broken, that again, self-esteem and poor self-esteem is amazing for capitalism. It is amazing for consumerism. Basically say, oh, you have a problem and we have the solution. And what we saw is that there was an increase in targeted ads, especially at women, that started to paint this false narrative that we were broken or we needed this thing to then be worthy, to be valuable, to be respected in society. Now, it hasn't gone away. So, yes, there's so much more around digital literacy and understanding the impact of messaging on people. We know that people see thousands and thousands of ads per day. So, what is the difference now? Well, I think now what's happened is that companies have just gotten a wee bit more sophisticated. Like before, like if you take, for example, old Special K ads, before they would literally have slogans like, can you pinch an inch? Can you pinch an inch? Because if you can't pinch an inch, then you have a problem and you need to be eating Special K 3 times a day. So they were very, very explicit, right? Can you pinch an inch was actually a slogan. However, now what happens is they've gotten a little bit more covert, let's say. So for example, let's just take the company Dove. Right? Dove is like beautiful at every size. We want you to feel good in your skin, good in your body. We're going to make you feel good in your skin, good in your body. Women should be embracing all of themselves, right? And everything comes across as this really pro women, pro body awareness, positive, all the things. Now, let's take in comparison something like Axe, which basically, like, women are often objectified in Axe campaigns. Men are talked about as gods. They use language like Spartans and warrior. Like, they have this crazy language of just this greatness, this masculine energy. Now, what's fascinating is Dove and Axe are owned by the same company. They are under the same company of Unilever. Like, it's the same company. So one message is telling women, be so content in what your body looks like. And men are being told women should be objectified and women should look a particular way. So what happens is that I think a lot of kind of marketers and this kind of idea is that we get sent lots of these really difficult mixed messages where it's hard to make sense of it. And that is literally like, we aren't even scratching the surface. We're like tapping on the surface, barely. We're even just like hovering about it. There's so many other things that we could talk about. But how all this relates to self-esteem is that when all of a sudden external pieces of information started to get brought into us kind of understanding our value and our worth, what happened is that this idea that where self-esteem is very much an inside job, it became this outside job. We became very susceptible to external voices, external measures of whether or not we are worthy, whether or not we are capable or we are competent. It became an outside messaging piece. So our genuine self-esteem became what Dr. Gabor Mate writes about as this idea of contingent self-esteem. This, I have to earn my worth. I have to follow this outside messaging to feel like I'm good enough, that I'm valued, that, gosh, even that I'm lovable, that I have to follow this external versus the belief that you are here, which means that by very definition that you are genuinely valuable, that you are worthy simply because you exist, that genuine self-esteem, that you are a creation, that you are perfectly and uniquely made and you matter. That's just genuine. It's just something that you know in your bones versus this contingent self-esteem, which is external. Now, we use these different strategies in our culture. You might not even be aware of it about when we think about the external measuring stick, even in simple everyday conversation. When you meet somebody, one of the first questions we ask in Western culture is, what do you do for a living? How do you make a livelihood? And we actually make a very quick decision based on what they do for a livelihood about how much level of respect we are going to show them. And again, this isn't about shaming us or judging us. It's just something that we do. It's some of these mental shortcuts that we take to identify whether or not this is somebody who is worthy of respect. We also make lots of shortcuts very quickly about whether or not this person is a threat, right? We are operating on this system of just trying to figure out, where do we fit in this society? Where do we fit in this conversation? Where do we fit in this interaction? So we make very quick judgments. But just think about it. Next time you hear somebody say, oh, what do you do for a living? Or how do you make a livelihood? Notice that we have a narrative that usually goes through it. You know, recently somebody asked me, it was so peculiar. I was on a flight and somebody said, oh, so, are you a stay-at-home wife? And I just had this moment. I was just like, I'm not, but I'm just really curious why you think I am. And we had this kind of conversation, and again, so much judgment we make very quickly when we see people. Anyway, I came home and I was talking to the family about it. And I'm like, yeah, it was kind of funny. I was on this flight, and somebody asked me if I was a stay at home wife. Which again, there's no judgment. It just again fascinating that people have these assessments of other people. And it was so funny though. In that moment, Hunter's like, man, I wish I could be a stay at home son. I'm like, tell me everything, Hunter. He's like a stay-at-home son. Like, I just want to like stay at home and have all my needs met. And I'm like, dude, you are a stay-at-home son when you are not at school. But even when you're at school, you are still well looked after. Okay, I digress. Back on the train of understanding genuine versus understanding contingent self-esteem. So, to be able to move us from a place where we are fostering and cultivating and leaning deeper into the genuine self esteem, we have to first notice when we have built systems where our self esteem is contingent upon. Okay, so we want to be honest with ourselves and practice a wee bit of that self awareness about recognizing the systems that we have created. Now, I'll give you an example. This is one of my oldie but a goodie shares. And I think I wrote about this actually in Calm Within the Storm. I had a moment recently where I remembered this example of how chaotic our life feels when we are in a place where our self esteem is external or contingent. Okay. Our lives are very chaotic when our sense of worth is determined by outside sources, outside voices, outside opinions. Oh my gosh, we are just at the mercy of society and the world if we operate in a place where our self esteem is contingent. Now, here's the example that I'll share with you that brought this back. Oh gosh, I remember so many years ago, I was working at the university and it was just a normal day. And I got a call from Jackson's teacher. And Jackson's teacher called me and she said, Robyne, I need to talk to you about something that's quite sensitive. I was like, okay. She said, I just want you to know that Jackson was hungry today at school and you need to pack in proper lunches because your child is hungry at school. Now, I don't know about you, but hearing a teacher tell me that my child was hungry at school was like running into a picnic table off the shin, right? Like it literally was like a 2x4 to the face where all of a sudden the story I was telling myself, oh my gosh, in that moment, just remember feeling like the worst. I remember feeling that I was this professional parent who thought I had all my ducks in a row, but really my ducks were starving. And I was, oh my gosh, if you just imagine for a moment that you are entrusted with the care of this child, right? Here's my third born. I am entrusted with Jackson's care, and I'm not doing the basics. My kid's hungry. So I remember sitting in my office, just like marinating in the misery of being a failure. Like nothing else mattered in that moment. Just, I am a terrible parent. My inner dialogue was not kind. So I sat there for a while and then realized, okay, opposite action, right? I got to do, if I'm feeling this awfulness, I got to just change it up. So I remember rushing home. I beat the school bus. And I remember Jackson walking in the front door, and I was so committed to like pouring love and attention on Jackson because clearly he is neglected. And I remember him walking in the door, and I kid you not, I went on this like little soliloquy. Okay. Like it was literally like this Shakespearean play where I am professing my importance and love of this child. And I ended with the words, you are not just spare parts for a medical emergency for your brother and sister. Okay, so just imagine this little boy walking in the front door. His mom is there, and he's a turnkey kid with his brother and sister. But all of a sudden, your mom's there, and she's proceeded to tell you about how important you are, and how loved you are, and how special you are. And you are not spare parts for a medical emergency. So, yes, this is unfolding. The best part is, I remember to this day, Jackson, like, are you good? Like, literally, like, not kind of like, oh, thank you, mom, for all this showering of affection. He literally is like, are you good? And Ava, who was just behind him, said, oh, she probably just like read a book or like listened to a new podcast. Like literally, she was just like, oh, mom's just being mom. Don't you worry. But Jax like held the moment. He's like, Mom, are you okay? And I'm like, Jax, I'm not okay because I thought I was okay this morning when I left, but I'm actually not because your teacher just told me you went to school hungry. And Jackson kind of chuckled and he said to me, he goes, "No, mom, don't worry about it." He goes, today I was in a bit of a hurry when I was making my lunch. And he said, those little muffins that you made, I just brought those as my lunch today. And I was eating my muffins at lunch, and the other kids asked for them because they looked really tasty. So I just gave my muffins to the other kids, and the other kids loved them. So I was a little bit hungry, but it's just because I shared the muffins. And I kid you not, I literally did a 180 from I am the worst mother in the universe to, oh my gosh, the other kids like my muffins. And I literally felt like I just won something. Like I was just elated that these other kids loved my muffins. And in that moment, when I realized that I was just in this, like I was getting whiplash, like from going from one extreme to the other, I realized this is the aftermath of when our self esteem is externally driven, where it is contingent on the teacher saying I was, she never said I was a bad parent, but I internalized it, to all of a sudden Jackson telling me kids love my muffins. And I literally thought that I just won something massive, that I had just won over these kids in grade 2. So again, why I use that as an example is that when our self esteem is external, it fluctuates. It is so inconsistent. And again, it's not just whether or not kids like our muffins we're using as a measuring stick. It's when we weigh ourselves in the morning and we decide the quality of our day based on what an inanimate object says in terms of the number, right? Even though that might not be valid, definitely not reliable, we're letting this be like, oh, I weigh this today, so I'm going to have a good day. I'm going to feel great. And there was even a study that was done years ago where they actually like changed the like basically the scale externally. So they literally like put a post-it note over the scale when in this particular sample it was women who were weighing themselves, and they basically said like, what is the ideal weight that you want to see, like what's the magic number for you to be a good person and have a good day, and women said this is the number, and they literally put a post-it note and put it on the scale over top, and they got them to go on and be like, okay, how do you feel? And they felt elated. They felt that their jeans were fitting better, they felt healthier, they felt more energized, because like all of this is externally driven. So we can easily trick ourselves into having more contingent self-esteem, but also we run the risk of having something that's so fleeting. Okay. And please, 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 as a wee little side message, let's not let inanimate objects decide whether or not we are going to have a good day today. Your good day is by design. It is not by an object or a tracker or any piece of technology telling you whether or not you are worthy of a good day. It's you. Okay, back on track. So let's say you've noticed, similar to I was in that position where we had a lot of contingent self-esteem. What are we going to do about it? Okay, so this is how we action it. First, I want you to ID or identify what is the false belief, or what is the external outside factor that you're playing with. Okay. The way I like to do that when I notice I'm in big feelings and like maybe I'm feeling just a wee bit off, when I'm in big feelings, I love to pause and simply ask myself, what story am I telling myself right now? What story am I telling myself right now? And I slow down long enough to revisit the narrative that I'm telling myself. What's that like undercurrent, or what are like the subtitles saying in my subconscious? In that moment I told you about when the teacher called me, the story I was telling myself is that I was a failure, that I was a joke, that I thought, here I have all my ducks in a row, but no, not even close. The story I was telling myself was taking in these outside pieces of information. Now, you might notice some of the stories we tell ourselves are things that we've been told or we've picked up along the way. Doesn't mean they're necessarily true, but we keep them alive by carrying them forward. What story am I telling myself? So once you spend some time noticing what story you're telling yourself, my invitation is to first think of dissolving it, not ignoring and overriding it, not judging ourselves for having that story. I want you to think about, how do I dissolve it? How do I let truth or evidence speak for or against that idea? Right? So sitting there with this feeling that I'm a terrible mom, I let that dissolve. Looking at the evidence of, where have I shown up in a really meaningful way? What do I know to be true about how I am a parent, how I love my children conditionalists, right? So again, sitting there and just letting the truth come to the surface and letting that falsehood start to dissolve. And once you feel it starting to dissolve, what I want you to then think about is how do we redefine that story? Yeah, I might have had moments where I dropped the ball. Yes. And I still am a worthy, competent, able, well resourced person, right? Mistakes or where we've made errors, those are not character traits. They're events. We don't want to let the past become the story, right? We can use the past, of course, to learn, to grow, to evolve, to integrate, but it doesn't define us. It's just part of the story. Now, after we've redefined that, we've got some clarity about where it comes from, my invitation is to create evidence and a stronger narrative that will hold true. So talking about the facts, using that information, tapping into the, hey, that one time I was able to do this and I showed up for Jackson in that meaningful way. You know what? This other time, like start reminding yourself of the wins or the successes or the pieces that you know to be solid and true. So again, start building new evidence that's more accessible. And remember, our beliefs are just practice thoughts. Beliefs are just practice and repeated thoughts. So, letting the beliefs that we know to be true, the ones that are in alignment with our values, letting those become the stronger belief versus that idea about some of those negative falsehoods. Another example, just recently, I was talking to somebody and they made an example. They said the example, like, oh, I'm not very athletic. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me more about that. They're like, well, I can't do, these fitness programs or these movement practices because I'm not athletic. And I'm like, well, who said you're not athletic? I kid you not. We went all the way back to their grade one teacher. Their grade one teacher told them that they were not athletic, and they have carried that belief and reinforced it themselves all the way into adulthood. Like, please, please, please pause on some of that nonsense. Like, take the time to question the story you're telling yourself. Because I'm sorry, no teacher in grade one can predict somebody's athletic prowess. Okay. But if we're not intentional, we can let these messages carry far, 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 far into our futures. And we're the ones that are keeping it alive. We're the ones that keep reinforcing it every time we don't sign up for that pickleball class that we want to try or that jiu-jitsu class because, oh, we're not very athletic, or, oh, I don't do my daily walks because I'm not athletic. Like, please don't let other people's perspective become your personal belief if it's not true. Okay. So there's two guiding principles as we continue to work with these new ideas. It's having clarity of knowing who you are and knowing who you are not. Okay, know who you are and know who you are not. Just recently, it was interesting because I believe it was Cody Sanchez, the awesome entrepreneur finance woman in the US. And she was talking about when we're practicing our faith. So when you're going through a difficult season and you happen to be a faith-filled person, and let's say you're praying and you entertain it not working out, she said we're actually practicing atheism. I just was so just like, wow, woman, you preach. Like, oh my goodness. So what I loved about that example is she's like, if you are a faith-filled person and you are praying for something and you are worrying about it not coming true or not working out, every time you revisit it, it's essentially putting kind of a check mark in the column of atheism that you don't believe that you are protected and you are safe and you're going to be okay. So again, knowing who you are and knowing who you are not. Obviously, I don't identify as somebody who is an atheist, so I wouldn't want to be putting more evidence in that category. I'm going to lean into my faith. I'm going to lean into trusting that all would be well. Okay, so knowing who we are and knowing who we are not, and being sure that we are choosing our thoughts, our behaviors, our actions, and showing up in the way that we believe we are, who we are designed to be. And the other piece is embracing the dual truths. Okay, so embracing the dual truths, which means there will be times where, yes, I'm somebody who is faith filled and I still have a propensity of worrying because of my lived experience, right? If, sometimes I get myself in a season where I get nervous that the other shoe is going to drop, or if it's not one thing, it's the other. Well, because I have stories that I've collected along the way that says that's not entirely not possible, right? The shoe does drop sometimes, and bad things do happen sometimes to even good people with great intentions. So, again, recognizing that while we want to stay in this place of having our genuine self esteem that's based on our innate worthiness simply because we exist, there's going to be moments where it feels a wee bit more fleeting. Now, the last idea here, and this will be the call to action, is to recognize, when do you operate? Okay, when do you operate in such a way where your genuine self esteem is more readily available? When do you operate? What are you doing? Are you around? What are you thinking about? How are you engaging? What habits are you doing when you feel like your genuine self esteem, that you know you're a good person, you know your heart is true, you have clear eyes, full heart, Friday night lights, let's go. What's going on? And you might notice it's when you feel more resourced, when you are rested, when you are fed, when you feel connection, when you are around your puppies, when you are around your favorite people, whatever that might be. So recognizing how our nervous system feels is another really great way of recognizing whether we are putting ourselves in situations where there is that contingent self-esteem versus genuine. Okay. I hope that was helpful to answer some of your questions about self esteem and where we want to put our energy and our focus. So, again, that last little takeaway, when do I feel that my genuine self esteem is flourishing? When it's more accessible, when it's more readily available? And also noticing the stories we tell ourselves. Because I want the story you tell yourself, yeah, it could have some, it could be pretty colorful at times. And maybe there's a few losses. Maybe you kind of lost a few short games. But I wholeheartedly believe if you're somebody who is showing up, listening to information around personal development and excellence and well-being, is the fact you're doing the good work. You're already probably a lot farther ahead than you thought you were. And you're probably definitely somebody who's handling things better today than you would have a week ago. So, to each and every one of you, thank you for showing up. Thank you for listening. Please keep asking me your questions. I'm here to help. And I look forward to our next episode. Try that again. I look forward to our next episode when we can connect and redefine, explore some other ideas. So, again, thanks for listening. Take good care. See you next time. Thank you for spending time with this podcast episode today. I hope you found something helpful in Resiliency Redefined. Please feel free to share it with somebody who you might think could benefit. Maybe there was something useful, something in particular that you think you could pay forward. Also, if you have a moment, please feel free to rate and review this podcast wherever you like to listen to your podcast. It means the world to me. And again, thanks for your time. Thank you for your interest. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.